Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to have you joining me for book club. Today, we're going to be talking about Family Reservations by Liza Palmer. Liza is one of my dearest writing friends. She's also a phenomenal writer. I've had her in a couple of times to teach for me. She's the author of The Nobodies, The F Word, and Nowhere But Home. She's the winner of the Willie Morris Award for Southern Fiction. She's also a two-time Emmy-nominated, internationally best-selling tea enthusiast. And sometimes she gets to write for Marvel. So what you're hearing here is that Liza kind of hits all of the different spaces that a writer lives in. We've got TV, we've got fiction, we've got comics, and we have tea. We are going to be talking today about this book. I am so excited to have you join me.
Thank you.
I know that you know I'm a fan of yours, but this is so good.
This would have been an awkward conversation if you were like, "Ooh, this book." But that cover's great. Yeah,
Really
cover
love
is
the
great.
font in this.
Oh God. It's like when you go to like your friend's like show in LA, there's always like a one woman show going on somewhere, and you're like, God, the lighting, man. The lighting was
Wow, so good.
you were on that stage. You were on that stage.
Yeah, my
Ooh,
favorite.
drink? You want to get a drink? Yeah.
Yeah. So happy to be here and support you.
Got a good crowd. You got a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
crowd. That's another one. That's a good
My
one. You
favorite
can.
was a friend of mine had warned me off of going to a show that he was in. It was a production of Oklahoma, and he had warned me that it was not good and that Curly couldn't sing. And I was like, oh, he's exaggerating.
Look at that. Yeah, that too.
And the moment we got to Curly's solo, oh, what a beautiful moment. The man was like gorgeous, looked like Curly,
Oh,
acting up a storm, gets out there and you just saw the terror coming over his
no.
eyes. And he's, oh, what? Could not sing.
Oh, God.
Uh, and so at the end of the show, I go back to meet my friend at the stage door, and in front of God and everybody, he says, so
No.
what did you think?
No.
And I said, it was everything you promised and more.
That's great. That's great.
This was everything you promised and more. Okay, so seriously. So I had heard you talking about the development of this book
For quite some time, in
for
fact.
quite
Yeah,
some time.
exactly.
It
Yeah,
fought you for a long time.
long
Uh,
time.
and I
Yeah.
know that you were writing
2017.
it. Yeah, you were
Yeah.
writing it in little bits and pieces, digging your way forward through it. It feels very coherent. Um,
Right.
One of the
Yeah.
things that is very exciting for me, because it's not a form that you see in science fiction and fantasy a lot, is that
Mm.
this is written in omniscient.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I
The first
love,
one of mine. The first one of mine that is.
really,
I always write first person present. It's a great moment,
intellectually,
isn't it?
I did know that, and also stunning. So you signal right at the beginning that this is going to be omniscient, the way you're
Yeah.
handling that opening. How hard was that to let people know that this was like, were you fighting your own instincts since you're normally in first person, or did it feel right to do omniscient from the beginning?
I know this will resonate. I think because we've talked a lot about how hard writing is. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of this, when you talk about a book, when it's all pretty princess at this point,
Yeah.
there's this kind of farcical conversation where you meant to do the things that you did, right?
Right. Yes.
When in fact, it's panicked, it's desperate, you're throwing anything at the wall. And I think the only thing, this isn't even true, there is a click you feel, right?
Mm.
Even when you're naming a character, there's a click you feel, you're like, there they are. And I think this one was so hard because I started in 2017. We've talked about this a lot. I was in a huge creative rut at the time. Didn't know it, of course. I thought I was killing it. And so all of the pitches I was having for this book were incredibly derivative and incredibly shallow. They were like,
Mhm.
what's hot? What's popping? What are we doing? And it's, do you want this meets this? And it was this thing. And I think it's the terrible thing that we talk about a lot, that art, unfortunately, you cannot separate art from the person, especially when we're speaking personally, where it's,
Yeah.
and I tell the story about how I tried to get a hobby and I was ceramics and that I couldn't center the clay. And the teacher came over and he was like, oh, you can't center the clay unless you're centered as a person. And I was like, then what the fuck do I need this hobby for? If I can't, right. Hope
Yeah.
language is okay in here, but
Uh,
quit that day,
fuck yeah.
quit that day. Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, as art usually does, it is the canary in the mine to how you're doing. And so I was not doing well. And so writing was not going well. And so I think the reason why it feels cohesive now is because in I broke it in October 2020 after fighting with it for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So 2017, and really before that, there was this kind of this. The only thing that held through the whole thing was the fine dining experience, the fine dining venue. That I knew so I knew I wanted that. And I knew that was, and I knew Northern Trade. I knew Northern Trade. The name was there. It clicked. It was there the whole time. It's so wild to think about the things that were there from the first. And
Right.
I think you get these images, and I think one of the things I learned in the writing of this book was to listen to the book about how it was talking to me. And it was talking to me for 4 years, 3 years, however long. It was just like, keep digging, work on yourself, go to therapy. You're nowhere near. You're
Yeah.
nowhere near. Just keep digging. And then I think once I thought about the first thing that started coming into was, how do I want people to feel when they read this book? What is a takeaway? And that got me into theme, right? That got me into the not what I'm writing, but why I'm writing.
Yeah.
And that's when we actually started hitting something. I wanted the book to be empowering for women.
Mm.
And that's what I got. I was like, I want this to be empowering for women. And then okay, that's a very broad statement.
Yeah.
So where do you want to go from there? And it was this thing about, we've all read those books where we felt inspired to maybe try something new or get out of our comfort zones.
Mhm.
And I know that for women, one of the major obstacles of that is that we don't get to do that a lot of the times, because
Yeah.
it's like you're taking care of people, you're very selfless, like there's all these things like that. There's all these expectations put on women and that kind of thing. And so I really wanted the book to challenge and empower people to step off a path. That's mostly like when families, like we have these kind of roles that we play. Um, and so for me, that came in first. Who is this book for? How do you want to
Yeah.
make them feel? Why would somebody give this book to somebody, and what would they say?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
was first. Then I got, then it's okay, what are you good at? What are you good at? And I was writing a book about like infidelity in marriage. I'm not married. I don't know about infidelity and stuff like that. So it's like, why are you trying to write something that this is
Yeah.
that write what you know, but it's actually not, it's very complicated. It's a different, and I'm like, I read it. I love a family. I love a family. And that's when I got at Surrey, SIWC in
Ah.
2020, because it was virtual, I got to go to workshops, and I got to learn, and I got to listen, and I got to
Mhm.
stop talking about things and like, these are the pitches and juggling and spinning plates and all that kind of stuff. And I actually filled the well. Like, all that advice that you're hearing is totally true. And that's when, on my journal, when I was taking notes from Surrey, I said succession in a restaurant. And that's when I got it. It was October 2020. And from there, I just I think the first one that came in was Athena, and I just saw her flipping that side of pork over.
Yeah.
And the other thing I saw her doing was pushing up her glasses with her wrist because she had a knife in her hand.
Yeah.
And once I saw that, I just wrote it as I heard it, and it was omniscient third. And that's the
Mm.
only way that I can, it's just how the book talked to me. And I know it sounds woo woo and all that stuff. But I can't explain why this one came out in third. I don't know why.
The thing is that it allows you to do commentary that
Yeah,
you would not have been able to do otherwise. The interweaving of their different
right.
storylines, their different reactions to the same scene. Honestly, it reminded me of Jane Austen in the way that she
Mm,
will have multiple characters in the same scene. They're all experiencing a different
right,
moment of it while all experiencing the exact same thing, and
right.
how that allows her to do this social satire,
That's it.
which this does really well. Having not seen Succession, there was a moment, it's deeper in the book, but there's a moment in the book where I'm like, oh, this is King Lear.
It's Lear. Yeah, it's Lear. Yeah. And I think
Um,
that's what also I got was, because I was back in the day, I was in the nerdiest book club of all time, and we read Shakespeare in order. And
wow.
I remember reading Lear at that point, and I had read Lear before, but I think I was a big dumb until about 20 years ago. Just my brain was just like, just not working. Because I'll read books that I read back in my 20s and 30s. I'm like, what brain read this
Right.
before? Um, and I remember reading Lear again in this book club and being like, justice for Cordelia. And I think that was the other thing that kind of got it, was like, what would have happened if Cordelia went to therapy? That's what this is. It's justice for Cordelia. She's in it for 8 pages. It sounds like she was doing great in France. I don't know why she came back. And I think for so many people, that siren song of a dysfunctional family, it doesn't kill you literally, but it does kill you figuratively. And I
Yeah.
think that was a big element of that, was kind of justice for Cordelia and justice for Goneril and Regan, which was like, yeah, they're monstrous. Who made them that way? How
Hmm.
did they get like that? And that's where we started building that aspect of it.
Yeah. And it is amazing how I don't want to talk about the ending until we go backstage,
Yeah,
but it is really amazing how everyone is shaped by the forces around them, but also so clearly by the choices that they are making.
that's right.
And when we're talking about fiction, we talk about agency and action,
Yeah.
but inaction,
Oh, not
it,
to decide is to decide. That's right.
it's as powerful. Like the decision to not intercede, the decision.
Hmm.
It's early in the novel, and it's the big kickoff. But the scene after the pork chop, it is the silence in that room is
Yeah.
gutting,
Yeah. It's heartbreaking.
absolutely
I
gutting.
fucking hated wting that scene. I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It had to happen, but yeah,
Yeah, you hated
I know.
writing that scene, and
I
also
hated
I'm
writing
pretty
the
sure
scene.
that you were
Yeah.
also going,
I know exactly, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It was so interesting because one of the last edits I did was I talked about the pork chop very abstractly, but I actually wanted to make the pork chop sound delicious. And
yeah,
that was one of the last edits I did, was I had him put the butter on it, and it was a cast iron pan, so that your mouth was watering for the pork chop. And so it was almost even worse that somebody
yeah,
denied it, because it had been built up. And I
yeah.
realized that was a detail that I left out, was that it was all writing on this pork chop, and I didn't describe it at all. And so it's like, this pork chop better be fucking good. Yeah.
And those sensory details, I think, are
Yeah.
one of the things that can so ground an emotion,
Uh-huh.
which is like one of the things where I almost feel like you're cheating because it is restaurant, so there is so much sensory
Yeah,
detail.
exactly. I know. Yeah.
But it is not just the what something looks like, what
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
it's what it sounds like, the sizzle as it hits the pan, and
That's
the
right.
smell of the butter, and then the contrast from the heat of the kitchen to the cold of
Yeah.
January. For folks who have not yet read this book, and please pick it up as soon as you can, it begins on New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
um, and cascades from there.
Yeah.
Um, Cascades in slow motion disaster.
It's just a gif of somebody falling slowly.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other questions that I had, and this does flirt with the ending, so I want you to um
Tread lightly.
I still want to just talk about the first part of the book until we go backstage for the Patreon supporters. But
Got
one
it.
of the things that I've heard you talk about when you're teaching is the avatar of success.
Yeah.
When you're talking about your Dirty Dancing example is my favorite thing, and I can never do you justice when I try to explain it to other people. But everything about having an avatar of success involves setting it up at the beginning.
Right.
When you were writing this, did you know what that avatar was going to be when you got to the end? And there's also an avatar of failure at the
Yes.
ending.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you know what that was going to be when you set it up, when you
Yeah,
started?
I knew both. I had an image in my head for the ending. It did not turn out to be the ending,
Hmm.
but it was the vibe of the ending. But it was the good thing, because I think that ending, the original ending that I had, felt very big and risky. And I think because of a trick I learned in writers' rooms, which is, what's the bad pitch? It's that kind of idea of what's the bad pitch. It takes the internal critic out, but it
Oh,
gives you a ballpark of what you're searching for. So if you're like, okay, what's the bad pitch? And you're like, he runs through the rain with a bouquet of flowers and meets her on her stoop. And it's, oh, you're looking for a grand gesture. You're looking for this. And then you can start taking the cliches out of it and moving it around.
well, that's
But
great.
asking yourself what the bad pitch is opens you up to actually brainstorm without cutting it off every single time, which is, oh, it's so cliche. Sure, but it's going to at least point you in the right direction, or
Oh,
at least give
yeah.
you some idea of what you're looking for here thematically or whatever it is. And so I did ask, what's the bad pitch? And it was a really bad pitch. It was really bad. It was over the top. It was all these things. It was just all this stuff. And there was nothing tonally that worked with it, which is what
Hmm.
exactly, and we all have our kind of writer board of directors. And I'm sure everybody has this in their writers community, you have the people that kind of, you read it to be like, you're a good writer, keep going.
Yeah.
And then you have the ones that kind of are like, hey, here's some stuff right there. And then you have the one where you need to like take a shot of whiskey before you talk to them, because they're like the ones that are like going to sit across from you and be like, all right, page one. And you're like, okay. So, and
Yeah.
you just, and as you're talking, you're just getting lower and stuff like that. That's my friend Tom. And basically when I pitched him that, he was like, yikes. And
Did he
it was
actually say yikes?
I think I think he did say the thing of like, it just doesn't tonally very measured.
Okay.
It was like, I don't think that tonally matches the rest of the book, because it didn't. But on that spectrum, here is where the original one, it was about here. It was still on that
Mhm.
spectrum.
Yeah.
And of course, the thing that's so frustrating is that the scaffolding is always there. It's there. The ending is in between the lines. You've put dots everywhere. You're the one that doesn't see the breadcrumbs that you're leaving. And of course, the ending that I got was seeded all the way through. It was there from the beginning. Of course,
Mhm.
I was the last person to see it.
Yeah. This feels appropriate for your characters.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, so I want to move to something else. Again, trying to have these conversations without going into the details of it. The sensory details are one of the things that I love about your writing, and you get into those even when you're writing an omniscient. We'll still have those moments where we zoom into the character and we
Right.
inhabit their body.
Yeah.
And there are several people, several different iterations of nervous breakdowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're writing something like that,
Yeah.
how are you pulling on your own experiences? Are you pulling on, and I realize this is a very vulnerable question, but
No, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm
yeah,
actually really happy to talk about it, because I know that when people talk about anxiety, it helps me not feel
yeah,
so ashamed of mine. I think for as far as anxiety, Athena struggles with anxiety. She doesn't know that's what it is. And if
yeah.
you notice in the book, she doesn't call it that until very much the end. But for me, it was so funny because I was talking to my therapist, ironically. It's not, I'm misusing the word ironically, but yeah, I was like talking to my therapist about how I felt like I was anxious about how I was painting anxiety. And I was like, I just feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again. And he was
Mhm.
like, yeah, but anxiety doesn't show up in the knee. It does show up in one way. It's not, for me at least, it's
Yeah.
in the chest, it's the choking, and that's usually where anxiety is. It's usually here, right?
Mhm.
And I think for me, because I think I have the constitution of an 18-year-old standard poodle, usually my digestion is in play as well. But it's the shortness of breath, it's the anxiety right here, it's that. And I had there was a scene in here that was literally taken right from where there's an incident with Athena with driving,
Mhm.
and it is that you're being pulled up by it's that floaty
Yeah.
feeling and then that tingling sensation. And the god, even as I was talking about, oh god, editing that was like whoa.
Yeah. I
And
was
then
feeling that in my body as I was reading
eh,
it.
yeah, it's very intense. And then there, and how I have helped myself understand my own anxiety is there's phases, right? Where phase
Mm.
one is when I'm kind of gulping for breath, I can't breathe. Phase two is where we start getting into the tingling, the floating thing and stuff like that. Phase three, everything starts pinholing my eyesight, and I start muffling, my ears start muffling. And so it helps that I have had anxiety attacks and that I knew what it was, but it was also an interesting exercise in trying to remember how they built, where
Mm.
how, because you can't, I always think about this kind of my Al Pacino rule, which is you can't yell every line.
Right.
You can't be at 11 for everything, because then 11 isn't 11. It's the default. It's not,
Right.
you're not, there's no stakes being raised. It's just, and so for me, I had to have that anxiety or even that understanding of her own anxiety build, because the hardest thing, we've talked about this a lot, is what do they know and when do they know it is the hardest
Yeah.
thing for a writer to do. And because it's like, not only when does the reader know something and when do they know it, but also when does the character know something and when do they know it. And I think, and it's hard because we know everything, and so
Yeah.
it's like trying to dole that out is one of the hardest things. And so that was the hardest one, about language, about how she talked about it. and
Hmm.
how open she was to talk about it. And I think she talks about it very, and she's a very intense character, and she doesn't talk a lot, and so it's
Yeah.
very hard to have her say things because she just does. It's not in character for her to do that. So it was difficult, but it was actually really a lovely experience to share that with readers, because I know that I feel better when I hear other people talk about anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, same. That's why
Yeah,
I went and got diagnosed with depression, is because I saw other people talking about it with ADHD,
yeah,
normalizing and destigmatizing,
that's right.
and also helping people who don't understand it, who don't have
Yeah,
it, see inside. So yeah, that's as
right.
uncomfortable as that is to read, quite the
Well,
gift.
and I think it's also trying to figure out what her trigger was actually really interesting, because I think even in
Yeah.
me, like trying to figure out what it was, and that was even a really cool way to get into that character about what,
Mm,
because she's not anxious in a Michelin starred restaurant. She's not anxious in any of those places and stuff like that. So what is it about this point in this part of the story that starts flaring it? And it's an interesting, because I remember somebody talking. I remember somebody saying, and once again, my memory is an actual sieve, but it's the idea that when people are trying to get sober, they don't go out when things are going bad. They go out when things are going well. The percentages of people going out and using are far more when things are going well rather than when things are going poorly. And that really resonated with me, because I think I literally texted myself, ask therapists what to do when things go well. So that's not a good sign about my ability to deal with joy. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the way I describe it is that the brain is really good at knowing that it's off balance, but it cannot tell if you are tipping towards the ocean or tipping towards
that's
the
it.
shore.
That's it. It
All it
just knows
knows
that
is
it's
that the
off balance.
yeah, it just knows that the boat is rocking.
That's right. That we're not at center. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So did you do character pre-work to decide what people's triggers were before you started? Is
Mm.
that something you found as you were writing, or some combination?
It's I found as I was writing, I also the girls were a lot in birth order, because I do
Mm,
think birth order, especially in sisters, is very relevant to character. I'm the baby, so I think that's why I resonated a lot with Athena.
mhm.
But I feel like it goes back to that theme thing that we were talking about. Was it was more around this idea of, because I think you have to look at the context for when I was writing this as well, which was I
Right.
was a frustrated writer who couldn't sell a book after selling books for 10 years. I was at a day job that was okay and then turned really bad. And so there was a lot of yearning, there was a lot of envy, there was a lot of frustration, there was a lot of hopelessness and fear. And it was doing something to me that was very interesting. And so one of the big questions I asked was, what happens to somebody if they can't do the thing they were put here to do?
Yeah.
And that is Athena and Marin, right?
Mm,
That's for very different reasons. Athena is being denied the ability to do something, or is being asked to do it in another way
yeah.
outside of her comfort zone. And Marin is afraid that she's being aged out. And it's how that frustration, it's the Langston Hughes, what a dream deferred,
Mm,
it rots. And I felt that, like I was rotting, I was eroding. It was to have to have a dream come true and then have it taken away.
yeah.
Oof. And I think for me, that was the biggest issue. Those two pins, once I got that,
Mm,
Jules and Sloane, and not for nothing, in the beginning, I thought it was just Athena's story. And so it started with Athena flipping that pig over.
yeah.
And then my agent actually, she said, hey, when I started reading this book, I thought it was going to be very different, because you got a person flipping a pig over. And then Jules comes in and she's and she's funny, and she's the kind of the comic relief, and she's the
Yeah.
middle kid and all that kind of stuff. She was like, can we flip Jules and Athena? And I thought, everybody knows this. Everybody always hears these writer rules and book rules and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, but if we flip Jules and Athena, isn't Jules going to be the main character because she's mentioned first? There's like this.
Mm,
I don't even know where I learned these rules. And she was like, oh, I always thought the book was about all four women. So I was like, oh, that's a great pitch. That's a lot of work on my part. And I went back, I flipped Jules and Athena, and then made the book omniscient for four women instead of just the one, which was what it
yeah.
was going to be in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I'm so glad you did. Because it really, it does. That's the thing about Lear,
Yeah.
is that it looks like on the surface, like it is the story about just this Reynolds losing his mind.
Yep. Yep.
And it's not that. It's
No,
about like all of the ripple effects. It's
that's
about
it.
the damage. And you can't, in prose, you have the opportunity. I keep picking up the book and flipping through it as if other people can see me flipping
No,
through.
I always point here because it's here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nobody knows what you're pointing at, weirdo.
Yeah, no.
It's like, exactly. You're just pointing off screen to what? What are you doing? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
But it is, prose offers you the opportunity to get inside each character's head
Yeah.
and see the contrast between how they're each experiencing things, and also the overlap, because they often have very similar responses
Yes, I
to a
know.
given moment.
Yeah.
Although
And it's
there's,
even, go ahead.
go on.
And it's even worse when you complicate this thing about like when you have it, which is like, what do they know in this moment? But how are you going to seed the kind of arc that they're going to have? So it's like, where do you plan that too, where there's a little thread that's going to pull, because you can't have them be cognizant of something that they're going to get to in 2B, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is, how do you use, because I think for this book, one of the main themes is truth, right? That's a big one that runs through it. And I think there's also this other kind of other character that is the truth, where
Yeah.
I always imagined it like The Office, where it's they'll be saying something and then the omniscient person will come in and be like, no, that's not right. They're full of shit. They're full of shit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think even in how they call Lola's thing a hit piece, that's not a hit piece.
No.
It's just telling the truth. And I think even that was such an interesting usage of that word, where it's like they're using this word and it's just not correct.
No. Yeah, I like where you say that her piece did something truly revolutionary, told the truth. I'm like,
Tell the
yes,
truth. But
yes,
a night of liars. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And not for nothing, it's those lies that you don't even know that you're doing. It's this kind of this building of this 3D world in your head about I'm still a good person, right? When
yeah.
it's
No,
not that
no,
night you weren't. Yeah,
no.
exactly.
Yeah. I think at this point, I'm going to invite you to come backstage. Thank you. So, everybody who's watching this on YouTube, what's about to happen is that Liza and my Patreon supporters and I are all going to go backstage, where we're going to talk in full spoiler detail about the rest of this book, because there are some things that Liza pulls off at the ending that are complicated and really cool. And I want to talk about them. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you next time.